Coming up on ParaTruth Reborn, we'll be talking to Sabina Qureshi about Ageless Wisdom Teachings.
Welcome to ParaTruth.
How's it going, Paratruthers? Welcome to another episode of ParaTruth Reborn. My name is Justin.
And I'm Erik.
And tonight we are bringing on Sabina Qureshi, and I am so stoked to bring her on. Sabina, welcome to ParaTruth Reborn.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So what first drew you into the Ageless Wisdom Teachings?
Basically, confusion and crisis. Yeah. Personal crisis, confusion. What am I doing here? What is life about? Everything felt like it was falling apart around me. I was fairly young. I was in my early 20s. My boyfriend committed suicide, and I just felt like, what? How could you do that?
Right.
Is that allowed? It was just such a shock. And until then, I just been carrying on very much in the straight and narrow, doing what I believed was expected of me, not necessarily what I always wanted, but what I thought was expected. And when that happened, it just kind of broke it all apart. And I thought, well, geez, if he could do that, then I'm just going to take stock here and try to figure things out, because I don't know what's happening. And I think when you go through a crisis, it does shatter something inside of you, but there's a positive side to that too, because sometimes what's shattered or broken are kind of like structures, like mental structures that you've been living inside. At least that's how it was for me. And once those structures were gone, what I realized was I really didn't know a lot. Those structures had kind of been keeping me going, telling me this is how it is, this is what you're supposed to do. And when they went away, it was kind of like when, those pictures of horses with blinders on, it was like taking those off. And suddenly I could look all around and realized, oh, geez, I don't know what any of this is about. And I think when that happens, life itself starts responding. I think life is always responding to us, but in those moments, maybe it's easier to see, because all of a sudden I met people who had answers to things, or who had good questions for me, and so it was kind of like one thing led to another. Oh, I met that person and they said, have you heard about this? And then I met someone else and they said, have you heard about that? So it was really a step-by-step process, but it ended up leading me to this information. And my first experience of this information was one of those aha moments where you go, wow, I'm finally hearing something that it's not just that it makes sense, because a lot of things make sense, but it brought together a lot of different aspects for me, and it combined them in a way that felt right. So I think it was a very visceral kind of feeling. Like, it wasn't very mental necessarily, but it was definitely because of the information itself.
Yeah. Almost like that saying of like hitting rock bottom. Some people, there's so many people who just feel like they hit rock bottom and they don't know what to do. But it's like, it's almost a refresher once you are able to gather yourself and realize, oh, I get to start over, and I have to start over maybe in some cases. But it's a lot easier to see then, because you don't have that foundation guarding you and protecting you, So it's kind of I think in a way it's a blessing at times, and it's
Yeah.
hard for sure. It's definitely hard. Now, for listeners who are unfamiliar with the concept, what exactly are the Ageless Wisdom Teachings?
Well, the Ageless Wisdom Teachings are a body of teachings which tell us about life, the universe, and everything at a level of explaining it, going right from the microcosmic to the macrocosmic. So for example, at the level of the atom, there's even a book called The Consciousness of the Atom. So it talks about consciousness as being something that pervades or is in everything in cosmos, in the universe, that everything has consciousness. It's just that the consciousness that each, for example, we live in the material world, and we experience physical plane reality. That is to say, dense physical solid, dense physical liquid, dense physical gaseous. So those are states of matter, physical matter that we're familiar with, that are real to us. And every object, for example, on the dense physical plane has consciousness. Every atom has consciousness, but it'll be a consciousness on a different level for each kind of like vibration. So it doesn't mean that, for example, this book that I have in front of me has the same kind of consciousness that I do, but it simply means everything is, in fact, part of that consciousness. There isn't anything that isn't part of it. And the Ageless Wisdom teaching talks about the relationships between all the forms of life in the universe, how they're related to each other, um, and how basically life works for us, that is, human beings. I mean, mostly it focuses on us, on human beings. And so it teaches about reincarnation, about the idea that in every lifetime we grow and learn, and that this literally changes the atoms in our physical body, that our atoms become replaced by subatomic material or light. So, in fact, your physical body is changing. I mean, we know from biologists that every cell in your body is replaced every 7 years. Like your body is continually renewing itself. But in addition, the Ageless Wisdom says that the atoms, like right down at the molecular structure of your body, that is changing as well in a different way. The atoms are being replaced by light, slowly, bit by bit. And that this takes place over hundreds of thousands of lifetimes.
Hmm.
So I like to talk about the word enlightenment, and the fact that it has the word light in it. Or we talk about, I'd like to shine some light on that subject. Like we use the word light a lot to mean awareness or consciousness. And so it kind of makes sense to me intuitively that as you grow in awareness and in consciousness, as you become more, you know more, you understand more, it makes sense that you would actually gain light. You know, you would actually change physically.
Well, it almost seems exactly like what many religions are trying to teach, but it doesn't break it down as in depth compared to what you're saying. Religions, I mean, don't break it down as in.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. I think the religions, at least the way that I understand the religions, they are teaching the same truths, but each of them arose at a certain place at a certain time, certain era in history, our history. And so the teaching was given at each time in a way that people for that time would understand it. If you look at the New Testament, for example, a lot of the way Jesus talked, he spoke in parables, and he gave examples that people who were living then in that place would understand. He talked about fishermen, he talked about farmers. So he was using images and ideas that people were familiar with because that's what they did. They were fishermen and farmers. Uh, Muhammad, for example, used different ways of describing what he was teaching, and that fit for the time and place where he was living when he received his revelations. So I think every religion tries to give the same teaching, but in a different way depending on its particular cultural or historical context. But in addition, I also think humanity has grown and evolved so much, especially over the last 2,000 years, since the last time that we had uh, one of the major masters among us, Jesus, that we are now capable of understanding things on completely different levels to the people either at the time of Muhammad or the time of Jesus or earlier. I mean, science has expanded our capacity to understand the universe, to understand energy, to understand everything, really, to a degree that now the kind of awareness, the kind of mind that the average person has is just so far beyond what people had, 500 or even 200 years ago.
Right.
So there's a whole different level of understanding we are capable of.
Now, at some point, I mean, science and religion were together and then they separated. In your opinion, what caused that, and was it even a smart idea to do so?
I don't think it was a smart idea, but I think what happened was I mean, I think I've read about this, but I can't quote anybody right now. But my understanding is that the people who were in charge of I know about I'm talking about Christianity. I can't speak for the other religions, but the people who were in charge, like the priests or whoever they were, uh, they began to feel threatened by the discoveries of science. But if you just think about the discovery that everything doesn't revolve around the earth. The fact that the earth actually revolves around the sun. I mean, that was cataclysmic for the way that people saw things. And I think what happened was that the people who were running the religions began to realize, gee, this information, these new ideas, these new ways of seeing things, they're just going to undercut us. Like, we're not going to be able to have this absolute authority over people because people are going to have other ideas, other ways of seeing things that will give them a kind of freedom or an openness that won't, make them stay in the kind of narrow track where we can control them. So I really think that's what led to that separation. And the good thing is it's ending. More and more people realize that, gee, the things that we talk about in religion are the same as the things that science talks about. And there've been these books like The Dancing Woolly Masters. I don't know if you know that book from the 80s. It's a while ago now. But it was written by Gary Zukov, and what he did was he tied together quantum physics and Eastern religions. And many other people have done that since. I think that was the first book that I encountered that did that. And so more and more people are realizing, also because we now have access to the teachings from all over the world. We're not just in the paradigm of the West. So people can read these ancient texts, these ancient Buddhist texts, Hindu texts, and they can see that, oh, gee, they're talking about things that sound very similar to what physicists are talking about, for example.
Mhm.
So I think it's coming back together now.
Okay.
Mhm. Which is definitely nice to see. One thing that we always see throughout history, whether it's religion, governments, etc., it's using fear to have control. And we see that time and time again. But now that we have, especially with like the help of the internet, social media, especially TikTok and Instagram and all that, there are a lot more people being able to learn about the science of life and what exists. And they're starting to realize how spiritually it does actually make sense. It all connects. And that's really cool. It's a really great thing. And I myself am constantly learning of such things. And it's really fascinating to go into a church and just hear them talk about the scriptures and only the scriptures, but not delve into the spiritualism behind it. Which Scott said, but nonetheless, it's really intriguing. Now, when it comes to like thinking about this, there's some things that we constantly come across, Justin and I, is this idea um of like waves, maybe like sound waves, for example, radio waves, frequencies, things like that. So one question that I have for you that we've actually asked others as well is, do you feel that music and spirituality are connected? And if so, in what way could that be?
Oh, very much so, because I think sound is a very important, I don't know what to call it. It's a very important aspect of our lives. Uh, if you look at the Bible, it says in the beginning was the Word. And my understanding is that refers to sound, that sound created the universe. And I believe in the Hindu scriptures, it's the same teaching. They talk about Om, the primordial, the most fundamental mantra. So sound is generative, absolutely. And we all know that music of different types will make us feel in different ways. It's very powerful. It penetrates right to our core. And people now know that people who get dementia, even when they become unable to speak or unable to understand speech, they respond immediately to music because it's so penetrating. It goes right into the core of us. So I absolutely think yes, very much so.
Well, and you say Christianity says the word. I mean, science says the Big Bang, bang being a sound as well. So makes a lot of sense. No, we're very much living in kind of a chaotic time right now. Many people would say as such as well. How do these teachings explain that, or even help with that to deal with that?
Well, I do think they help. They basically, what these teachings say is that that they talk about the movement of our solar system through the heavens. That the solar system is making a giant, giant circle through the heavens, and it takes about 26,000 years for one revolution of that circle. And if you divide that in 12, each 1/12th portion of that rotation through the heavens is a period of time in which our solar system is in an energetic relationship with one of the constellations, the 12 constellations of the zodiac. And what happens is, because we're in an energetic relationship with that particular constellation, we receive energies from that constellation. And these energies stimulate us in particular ways. So the Ageless Wisdom teaching talks a lot about energy as the fundamental thing, if you will, in the universe. And we know from Einstein's theory of relativity that energy and matter are the same thing. The only difference is that energy is matter sped up a lot. I mean, to the speed of light squared. So that's very, very fast. But that they're interchangeable. So what happens when we're receiving energy from a particular constellation, and I like to talk about the sun because we're all familiar with the energy of the sun. It's very normal to us. Uh, the sun shines on us and we like it or we don't like it, but it's a fundamental part of our lives. And so this Ageless Wisdom teaching says that every constellation, every star that's shining and emitting light is also emitting energy of different vibrations, different frequencies. And these energies stimulate life in different ways. So according to this teaching, during the previous 2,000 years or so, we were in an energetic relationship with the constellation of Pisces. And the energies of Pisces stimulated in us, in human beings, individuality, the development of our individuality, also our capacity for devotion, and the flip side, or if you want to say maybe the negative side of devotion, fanaticism. So we became very highly individualized over the last 2,000 years. Now, of course, I'm talking, when I say we, I mean all of us, the human race. And of course, I'm assuming reincarnation because none of us have lived for 2,000 years. So all of us have been born, lived, died, born again, lived, died, etc., like over and over. And so this highly developed individuality that which we now have uh, is now being stimulated in a different way because we've entered the age of Aquarius. And you may be familiar with that song about the age of Aquarius. But according to this teaching, yeah. And if you talk to any astronomer, yes, it's true. We are now in closer proximity to the constellation of Aquarius, and we are receiving these energies, and they stimulate synthesis, which is bringing things together to make something new. Like, think about synthesizing, excuse me, a chemical in the lab. And so the energies of synthesis, these energies are stimulating all of us to turn to each other in a new way. And in a way, what Benjamin Creme liked to say is they stimulate us to put our individuality to work for the benefit of the larger whole. And so there's a greater awareness, greater than ever, I think, among pretty much everyone, of this need to respond to the current situation, the current crisis, in whichever place you may be living, whichever particular crisis you're dealing with, by coming together with others of like mind and as groups working to try to put into place the things you want to see or get rid of the things you don't want to see. So I think the encouraging thing from the point of view of the ageless wisdom is that what we're going through is not it's not unique in the sense that it's not unheard of. It's what happens every time there's a change of age. And the reason for this is when you take away an energy that's been stimulating everything, in a way, you take away what has been nourishing everything. So all of our institutions, all of our ways of doing things, whether that's politics, economics, education, all of these, which we now have kind of the current way that we've always been doing things, these were built up over the last experience of the age of Pisces and were created or nourished by those energies. Those energies are no longer coming into our system. So those structures are in a way dead. They don't have any life in them anymore. And we see that they don't have any life because they're not working. They're not serving the needs of life, of actual living people. And so people are looking around for a different way to do things, a different way to do politics, a different way to do economics, a different way to do education. And so this is a crisis because of this change. But the ageless wisdom says it's not going to continue to be a crisis forever because we're going to be finding our way out of it. We're going to create new ways of doing things, and they will be based on synthesis. They will be based on sharing. And sharing is the major teaching of the ageless wisdom because sharing, according to this teaching, is the recognition in the other of the same divinity that's in you. That is, when you share with someone, you're recognizing the mutuality. You're the same as me. In other words, what you're affirming is the connection between us. And the ageless wisdom says that every single atom in the cosmos is connected to every other atom in the cosmos. Nothing is separate. The separation we perceive is an illusion, but on a fundamental level, it's all connected. And so when we act from that understanding, there's an added power in what we do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's like one giant web. And, some of us are more, I think, more inclined to feel that and see that. I like to think of the web much like a spider web, right? A spider is on a web. It feels vibrations throughout its entire web. And we do the same thing as humans. We can sometimes feel a fluctuation within the universe, like something's changing. How many of us have a connection to the stars, to the moon? The whole idea of like lunacy, right? People who kind of go crazy when there's a full moon. I know personally myself, like I love the full moon. I feel more energetic when the full moon is out. I feel more energetic. Sorry, when the sun is out away from the clouds. I feel more energy and relaxed, more peace when I'm in the forest or next to the ocean because there are energies that they all give off in different frequencies, but we relate to them all because we are, in much the same way, we are stardust, much like our Earth is stardust, much like the rest of the universe is made of stardust, which is just, to me, it's incredible. It's really cool to think about, and it's also mind-boggling to lay there in bed at night, like trying to fathom it all, right? But it's super cool.
Yes. This is amazing.
Now, you had kind of touched on this a little bit here, but do the teachings discuss, before I get into this, I kind of have my own little thoughts on this, just based on the scripture. So the Holy Scriptures, Bible in particular, because I recall Jesus kind of talking about this, but do the teachings discuss cycles of civilization or reoccurring patterns through history or in history?
Well, they do, in the sense that they say that at the beginning of every new age, a teacher comes to help humanity make that transition.
Mhm.
So the teacher who came at the beginning of the age of Pisces was Jesus of Nazareth. And the teacher who's here now, his name is Maitreya. And he, in fact, Jesus is a disciple of his, according to the ageless wisdom. Jesus is a master of wisdom. We call people who have finished the evolutionary process on Earth masters of wisdom because they have mastery over themselves on every plane, and their bodies have become completely light. That is, they are no longer dense physical bodies. So these people don't need to eat or sleep, and they have a kind of understanding that we can't really imagine because we're quite far in our evolution from them. However, what they say is that we're all going to be masters of wisdom one day, each and every one of us, because we're in this giant sort of school, the school of Earth, and we're on that path of evolution of consciousness. So the repeating cyclical part of it is that at the beginning of every age, a teacher comes and in a way gives a new dispensation or teaching that will help for that particular moment, which is new in the sense that we've never been here before. And so Maitreya is here now, and he's very, very simple. His teaching is extremely simple. And I'd like to read from a book that was published by Share International Foundation. It's called Messages from Maitreya the Christ. Now, I'd like to explain briefly why we say Maitreya the Christ, since if you're Christian, or even if you're just from the West, you will be familiar with the word Christ as being attached to Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
Now, according to the Ageless Wisdom, the word Christ refers to an office or a job, a position in the spiritual hierarchy of our planet. And by spiritual hierarchy, what I mean is I'm talking about these masters of wisdom who have completed their evolutionary journey and could, if they wanted to, leave Earth and continue to evolve in consciousness on other planets or in other solar systems, because there is life on every single planet in every solar system in the universe. The only reason we haven't seen life yet, for example, on Mars, is that the people who live on Mars are living on the etheric planes of matter, not the dense physical planes of matter. And so what are the etheric planes? Those are also physical planes of matter, but not dense physical. As you go up in vibration, as frequency of vibration increases. So for example, if you go from solid physical to liquid, I can give the example of ice, which is water, but when it's solid as ice, the molecules are moving much more slowly. If you heat the ice, it will melt and it will turn into water. What has happened? You've heated it, you've added energy into the system, and the molecules are moving more rapidly, and that's why you have water. If you continue to heat the water, it will change into steam, and that's like the gaseous phase of water, in which the molecules are going even faster than they were when they were liquid. And so what the Ageless Wisdom teaches us is that above, in the sense, I'm not saying better by when I say above, I just mean at a faster rate of vibration. So at a faster rate of vibration than gas are the etheric planes, and there are 4 of them. And so people on the other planets, according to the Ageless Wisdom, are living on the etheric planes of matter. So they're not visible to our eyesight because we don't have etheric vision. However, according to this teaching, there will be people coming into our incarnation, maybe even now, who have or will develop etheric vision. So they'll be able to see life on that plane. Now, let me just go back. So I was talking about the Masters of Wisdom, about the Christ, about the spiritual hierarchy. So the spiritual hierarchy is simply like, in a way, you could think of it as that group of very advanced beings, the Masters of Wisdom, who have chosen, instead of going on to other planets or other systems, they decided to stay here and help us and all of life on the earth. So their job is to kind of oversee what we're doing, make sure we don't really muck it up. And of course, they're also evolving. They continue to evolve as well. There's no end point. This is an infinite process. So in that group, they work together. They have group consciousness, but there are also differences in levels of consciousness. When we talk about the process that each of us goes through to become a master of wisdom, what the Ageless Wisdom teaches is that near the end of all of your hundreds of thousands of incarnations, you go through 5 major expansions of consciousness, which are given the names initiations. So they talk about the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth initiation. A master of wisdom has gone through all of those. And so in that group, the masters of wisdom, there are some who have gone through another initiation, the 6th or the seventh, for example. And so the job of the Christ is the job of a person who has a higher level of consciousness than the masters, but he's one of them. It's just he's taken another step beyond. And that is the kind of like president or prime minister. We have names for these jobs, and different people can be the president at different times. So in the same way, in the Ageless Wisdom, a different person can be the Christ at different times. So according to this teaching, Maitreya is the Christ now, and he will be for the next 2000 and a bit years. So he's here now, and his teaching is, and I wanted to read from this book, but I got sidetracked by that word there.
I appreciate you explaining that, though.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because it's such a well-known word, right?
Right.
So this is from message number 77. These were messages that Maitreya transmitted through Benjamin Creme, and you know what a medium is, or mediumship,
Yes.
and how people can communicate through another person using that method. Well, these were given through something called overshadowing, which is similar to mediumship, but the main difference is that the vehicle, the person who's receiving the message, is fully conscious while it's happening. So Benjamin Creme is the person through whom we have the most recent kind of edition of the Ageless Wisdom Teaching. And so this is a book that was published of 140 messages that were transmitted through him by Maitreya at public meetings that he gave in London. And the date is, for example, this one is 1979. These are from a while ago. So I'll just read a few sentences. So Maitreya says, "I know that within men sits a divine being whose plan it is that love and justice should triumph. This being so, the end is assured." So from his level of consciousness, he's saying that that's what he sees. Not only that this divine being sits within us or is who we are, but that our purpose, like what we actually want, is that love and justice should triumph. And that the fact that this is so means that it will in fact happen. And then just another quote here. He says that, and I like these words because they're so simple, but I feel they sum things up a lot. And I think I've lost the page I wanted to read from. Just a second. Okay. Yes, here it is. He says, "My teachings are simple, my words likewise. All that I say is quickly understood. There is nothing difficult about the truth of God. The truth of God, my friends, resides in the hearts of all men. That simplicity is yours to unfold." So he's saying it's already inside of us. It's not somewhere else.
Mhm.
I won't read more right now, but I just wanted to comment because sometimes people say, well, why do they talk about men? What about women? And so there is an answer for that. And the reason is that energy has two polarities, negative and positive. Kind of like if you think of a battery, it's got a positive pole and a negative pole. So the word negative here and positive are not value judgments. It's not like one thing's good and one thing's bad. That's not what it means. It's actually talking about energy. And so the description that is given for why there's this difference. Hang on, I know I wrote it down here. Yes. Why are the masters? Because they are currently only in male bodies, and the word man is used to refer to humankind, everybody. But there's a reason why they're in male bodies now, and that is that the polarity, the negative polarity of energy, again, not meaning something bad, just a different polarity, that is the polarity of energy that's in matter, in physical matter. And because of the relationship between spirit and matter on the earth right now, what's needed is a lot of the positive pole of energy. And so that's why they're in male bodies now. But this is going to change. And so, according to Benjamin Creme, in about 400 years, the energy relationship between spirit and matter will have changed so much that masters will take female bodies as well. So I don't know if that's very useful to know, but I thought I should mention
But
it.
it's intriguing nonetheless.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this at the very beginning that you're going through kind of a downward spiral or slope at a very young age, and then you discovered these teachings. Has studying these teachings changed how you view a lot of things?
It absolutely has. I mean, I feel as though uh, I began to be able to include everything. Uh, for example, just something, this is very simple, but my mother came from a Christian background and my father came from a Muslim background. Neither of them were overtly religious. We didn't go to the church. We didn't go to the mosque. Nobody talked about religion. In fact, my father was an atheist. Uh, but I was aware of these different religious traditions because we did go to the mosque for Eid as a cultural celebration, not to pray or to do anything religious. And I had been to the local church in my neighborhood with my friend when I slept over at her house. Her family went to church on Sunday. So I knew about these different religions. And I know that as a small child, I was a little bit confused because I thought, am I supposed to believe in one of them, or is one of them right, or how do I sort this out? And my own inner kind of answer was, well, if God really is God, then he or she or it must be everywhere, not just in one part. So then it probably doesn't matter which religion I want. Um, but one of the things that I was able to kind of include once I learned the Ageless Wisdom or began to read it was the idea that all the religions are simply teaching the same reality or the same facts, just in different ways. And I think the golden rule is one of the things that it's the easiest place to see this. For example, in Christianity, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Um, in Hinduism, do not to others, which if done to thee would cause thee pain. Or in Islam, no one of you is a believer until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Uh, Judaism, what is hurtful to yourself, do not to your fellow man. Or Taoism, regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and regard your neighbor's loss as your own loss. So in some ways, it's very easy to see, well, gee, that's the same teaching. It's just said slightly differently.
Sure.
So the Ageless Wisdom was a way for me to say, okay, they're all included and it's all part of one larger whole. The other thing that was included, and I'm kind of going maybe in a different direction here, is that when I was a small child on a family trip to the US, running around in the backyard of somebody's house at night, I saw a UFO in the sky. And I knew what UFOs were because my dad used to watch a show about like unexplained mysteries kind of thing with this guy named Erik von Daniken. I remember that name. And
Yeah,
so
he's
it was
written
all about
several
like,
books on that.
exactly. Yeah. So as a little kid, I was 8 years old, but I knew about Erik von Daniken and I knew what a UFO was. And so when I saw one in the sky, I was like, that's a UFO, right? Uh, and of course, I ran in to say to my dad, look, there's a UFO. But he took so long to come outside. He's gone by the time he got out there. But the fact that I'd seen this UFO when I was 8 meant that as an adult, I knew UFOs existed, but I didn't know what they were, or where they came from, or why they were there. So in this teaching, the Ageless Wisdom, this was included. There's life on all the planets. The other planets are much more evolved in many ways, including technologically. So they have space flight. And that the people who come here in the spaceships, Benjamin Krem calls them our space brothers. I guess you could say brothers and sisters. And he says they come here to help us. Basically, right now, what they've been doing is they're mopping up all of the contamination that we put into the atmosphere, primarily from nuclear plants and nuclear bombs and everything nuclear. So according to him, And he gets he got his information from one of the masters of wisdom. That is what he told us. And many of us, myself included, I mean, it resonated for me, so I thought it was true. Anyway, what he said was the Space Brothers are mopping up that contamination. They're doing it as a service to us because not only is there like a group of masters on our planet overseeing our evolution, but on every planet, there are very evolved beings overseeing the evolution on each planet. And these different, if you want to call them like parliaments, they all talk to each other. So sort of through the whole solar system, they're all helping each other out. So it's kind of like the idea that first of all, we're not alone, but not only we're not alone, but all these more evolved beings are in communication with each other. They're all looking out for each other. So that's one of the main teachings of the Ageless Wisdom, is that there's a plan. It's kind of the plan of evolution, but that plan doesn't just include our Earth. It includes all the planets in the solar system. It includes the solar system, because everything is conscious. So this Earth, our planet, is actually the body, the physical body of manifestation of a great being. Just as when you look at me while I'm talking, you're seeing my physical body. But according to the Ageless Wisdom, I'm actually a soul, and you are too. We're all souls. What is a soul? A soul is a being of light, of fire, that doesn't exist on the physical plane. But the soul is able to incarnate through a physical body, and in that way experience life on the physical plane, learn about life on the physical plane, and in the process spiritualize matter. So that's that process I was saying about the atoms and molecules in your body becoming light. That's the spiritualizing of matter. So just as the Earth is the body of a great being, our solar system as well is the body of an even greater and vaster being. And so if you asked someone who studies the Ageless Wisdom, what is God? They would say, well, God is the consciousness that created everything and that is in everything. And so you can see God in an atom, but you can see God also out there in the cosmos. Our galaxy is also the body of manifestation of an even greater being, one who in the Ageless Wisdom is referred to as he about whom naught can be said, not as in N-A-U-G-H-T, nothing can be said, because we can't comprehend a consciousness on that level. It's so far beyond us.
It's really interesting that you mentioned how these UFOs are helping us, and how there are individuals or groups within or on different planets that are all talking to each other. Because not too long ago, we had someone on who was talking about the Galactic Federation and how she was able or has the opportunity to go onto a spaceship or spacecraft with them, and has met all these various types of extraterrestrials, as we call them here on Earth, right? And she's like, she has a book, and she like describes all these different individuals that she's talked about and how they work together to kind of help balance the greater good. But that there's also these other entities that maybe aren't so nice and they don't play well, as they kind of want to do the opposite. Typical, good versus bad type thing. But it's just interesting to hear you say it, talking about especially enlightenment and Ageless Wisdom, whereas she comes from a very different background, and yet it's kind of talking about the same thing. So that's very interesting to me, and just something that kind of connected, because that was one interesting conversation that we had with her for sure. Now, I know we're kind of getting a little closer to the end here, but one thing I do want to know is what kind of lessons do you think that modern society today desperately needs to know right now, especially with all the chaos that's happening?
I think probably the most fundamental is to learn to share the resources of the world, and to see each other as ourselves, to understand that we're in this together, and we need to work together, because that's the only way we can solve our problems. And many people are aware of that. I mean, millions and millions of people are aware of that. Many scientists are telling us that in so many different ways. People from all different walks of life and all different types of groups are working under that idea and working to share that idea. I think that it's really becoming very, very widely understood that we're not going to be able to get out of these crises unless we do it together. There is really no other way. And Maitreya says that, in fact, sharing has never been really tried on the scale that it needs to be done. Because the idea, it's not so much I have to give you my life savings, but rather on a global scale, whatever exists belongs to everyone equally. I mean, we have this system right now, economically, in which some people have so much wealth, it's beyond comprehension, while others hardly have enough to even survive physically and even to eat enough from one day to the next. So there's this enormous gap in terms of what people are actually able to access in terms of resources. So that inequality is what's causing all of the problems. The Masters of Wisdom say that war is a result of this inequality, this lack of sharing. And I mean, on some very simple, basic level, we can all understand that, because generally when people go to war, it's because they want someone else's land, for example. So it's a really huge leap in one way to say we should all start sharing on a global level. It sounds very pie in the sky. How are we going to do that? However, I think more and more people realize that is the only way, and it's a slow process, but generally, I think these changes always come from the ground up. Have you ever heard of Howard Zinn? He was a historian, American
I
historian.
don't think so.
No.
Well, he was very interesting because he was one of the first people in his field to write about history, looking at it from the ground up. Because usually how history is taught is there was this king and he did this, and there was this general and he did that. Uh, but what Howard Zinn did was he said, like he did, I think that the title was A People's History uh, of the United States. What he talked about was, where did we get the 8-hour workday from? Where did we get the weekend from? Uh, Many concepts that are now taken for granted, he describes how those changes came about because regular people, working people, got together and started demanding those changes. And in fact, there were many who gave their lives for that, because the initial response from the industrialists, from the people kind of running things, was to kill people who were demanding something
Yeah.
that was going to eat into their profits. So what he describes is a process by which the best changes that we know about in terms of our daily lives came about because people on the ground demanded them, fought for them, did what they had to bring those changes about. And it took years. It wasn't something that happened overnight. So I think if we understand that that's how change really comes about on a societal level, on a global level, then we understand, okay, that's the work we need to do. And to me, the Ageless Wisdom is like a guiding kind of teaching, because it talks about the need for sharing, the need for justice, that until we have real justice, we will never have real peace. And real justice, what they mean by that is literally that everybody has the fundamentals for life, and that there are not these enormous differences in wealth. So it's a really completely different idea about life, about each other. But I think it's extremely inspiring. And I know that for many people it resonates, because it sounds so simple. It seems so intuitive.
Mhm.
Should that really be so hard? Right.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Now, in your opinion, what do you think humanity's next chapter looks like, going through what you've learned in these teachings?
Well, we do have some predictions, which are really quite interesting, about how life is going to be as we move into the future. And so I'd like to just read a couple of these things to you, because I found it really fascinating. They talk about how the cities that we live in are going to be different. We're going to have completely different kinds of experience of life in cities. We're going to have silence, for one thing. We won't have so much noise anymore. Uh, that's one of the biggest changes, and that's one of the changes I'm really looking forward to. So, for example, uh, the the we're going to have peace and tranquility in exact proportion to the present discord. That is, the violence of hate and hatred of today will be transmuted into goodwill. So as much violence as we have now, that's how much peace we're going to have. As much hatred as we have now in the world, that's how much goodwill we're going to have. Goodwill understood as when you want good for others, not just for yourself, but for others as well.
Mhm.
There will be a new science, the psychology of the soul, and that will be the basis for all future education, and it will transform life for both children and teachers. The worst areas of slums and decayed buildings in the major cities will go, and they'll be replaced by recreational parkland, by ordinary housing on a human scale. So no, I think skyscrapers probably no, but more just every family being able to have their own house, interspersed with parks, shopping areas. A much simpler style of living will be part of this coming civilization. There will be more leisure, and that will evoke undreamed of skills and talents, allowing men and women to reach their full potential, close involvement in community and national life. And there will be a new reverence for all manifestations of life, bringing humanity into better alignment with the animal and the other non-human kingdoms. And there are lots of other things, but it's a beautiful kind of vision. And I know that it sounds very unrealistic right now when we look around us, but I'd like to remind everyone of how much the world has changed in just 100 years. If you go back 100 years, right, to
Oh, yeah.
1926, to now. I mean, I was thinking about this today. I was sending an e-transfer to a friend on my cell phone. And I thought, if you had done that in front of someone in 1926,
Right. They would have called you a witch and burned you.
exactly.
I think about it quite often, actually, like how crazy it is. Just when I was growing up, we didn't have texting, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet. At least not like we do now. I had a black and white TV that was a little dial. You had to get up and change the channel. And it's crazy to think about nowadays because, like, man, it's all so easy, and like kids, they'll never know. They'll never really know. But it's wild to think how much has changed just in what I'm 40. So in 40 years,
Mhm.
Yeah,
let alone 100 or more.
that's right. Yeah. And I know we're almost out of time, so I briefly want to mention transmission meditation. This is something that it is part of the teaching that I have been talking about, and you can do it in groups. In fact, you can only do it in groups. Sorry, I shouldn't just say you can. You can only do it in groups. It's a group meditation for groups of 3 people or more. It's based on the science of triangles. And so, for example, if you have 3 people, you have 1 triangle. If you have 4 people, you have 4 triangles. But if you have 5 people, you have 10 triangles. So the number of triangles increases exponentially. And what that means is the amount of energy that can be transmitted through a group really goes up as you have more people.
Okay.
This particular meditation is a kind of service that you can do. It helps the planet because it's something that's done in conjunction with the Masters of Wisdom. They are the custodians of these great energies that stream into our planet. What I was talking about at the beginning of the show about the different stars emanating energies and that they stimulate us in different ways. Well, many of the energies that enter our solar system and come onto the Earth are vibrating at such high frequencies that we can't absorb them. So what you do in transmission is by sitting together with other people at an agreed upon time, the masters know that the group is going to be there at that time on that day. To start, we all say an invocation together. It's called the Great Invocation. I'll just say the first lines. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. And the next stanza is about love. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. And then it continues. So we say that together. That's the signal to the masters that we're ready. And then what they do is they direct these very high frequency energies through our chakras. Our instructions are simply to hold our attention here at the Ajna Center. As long as we're focused here, we're receiving these energies. What happens? They just go through us. They go in and out. And as they transit us, their vibration is lowered. The frequency of the vibration is lowered automatically by going through us. And so once the energies exit us, they are now absorbable. That is, they can be absorbed by regular people. And so then the masters can send those energies where they're needed. We're told not to direct the energies ourselves because we can't see what the masters see in terms of knowing where the energy should go. But it is an act of service, and it's of great benefit to the person doing it as well. So you really experience a great leap kind of in your own evolution when you do this meditation. So I want to just tell everyone about it. And also you can form a group yourself with 2 other friends. There's information on the website, shareinternational.org, about how to do the meditation. You can download a free PDF, a book about it called Transmission Meditation, a meditation for the new age. You can also join groups that already exist. I believe on the Share International USA website, you can find where there are groups in your area. And these days, since the pandemic, many people are also connecting with each other using Zoom to meditate in groups.
Wow.
So there are many different ways you can do it.
All right. Well, we are here at the end of the show, so we definitely want to give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you and anything you'd like to share as well.
Well, I'd like to say, please do visit the website, shareinternational.org or Share International USA. And I don't know the exact link, but I'll send it to you so you can put it here. But if you Google, I'm sure, Share International USA, you'll find the website. Every country has a website. For example, there's Share International Canada, Share International Germany, France, in their own languages, of course. I highly recommend the New Zealand page. I like it a lot, Share International New Zealand, because they have a lot of different kinds of material, like radio shows and different ways to connect to this information. There are 17 books that were published, taken from Benjamin Krem's lectures, because he gave public lectures. I haven't actually talked about Benjamin Krem, but he's the person through whom we've got the most recent edition of this information. He was a Scottish artist and esotericist. He passed away recently, 10 years ago in 2016.
Wow.
But these 17 books, you can see them on the websites. 4 of them are available for free download. If you want to get more of me particularly, I did a podcast called What in the World is Happening, and I can share the link also for that. We have a YouTube channel, so you can see episodes. I'm not doing it anymore, but there were 3 years worth of episodes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Sabina, thank you for being on ParaTruth Reborn.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Great questions.
All right, folks. We did ask the Paratruthers community on Facebook, do you believe humanity is entering a new era of consciousness? 33% said yes, absolutely. 51% said something is definitely changing. And 16% said no, humanity repeats the same cycles. Very fascinating. And I love doing these polls because it definitely gives us an insight as to what people are thinking about. Don't forget to subscribe directly to the ParaTruth Reborn YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. That's the best way to help us continue bringing you more conversations about the paranormal, spirituality, and the unexplained. Also, join the Paratruthers community on Facebook and be a part of the discussion. You'll see polls like that. We will try and get questions for our guests if you're not able to make it to the live show. So there's a lot there that you're missing out on. Until next week, folks, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin.
And I'm Erik. Peace.